All right, welcome everybody. We'll call this meeting to order. Bailey, can we get roll call? Or
Absolutely.
Dan?
Councilmember Bain.
Here.
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Eigner.
Here.
Councilmember Freer. And Mayor Winnick.
Here. I'd like to ask everybody to rise for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'm going to look for a approval of the agenda with a notation to move 7A, officer swearing, to the top of the agenda. Officer swearing in, sorry about that.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll second.
Sorry.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's approved. So we're going to do our officer swearing in just before the open forum. Let everybody be able to take care of that, get that taken care of, and we can get on with our boring as usual business. Chief?
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, good evening. It is a great honor to formally introduce you and our community to our three newly hired police officers. Officer Josh Brown, Officer Ashley Glenn, and Officer Tom Coulter were three applicants of over 130 who applied for the position of police officer with the Forest Lake Police Department in July. The hiring process involved applicants taking two separate written exams, were interviewed by two separate interview panels, and took physical agility tests before being selected for a very thorough background investigation, which also included a medical exam and psychological exam before being selected as police officers with the police department. Their start date with the Forest Lake Police Department was on October 30th. The entire hiring process took approximately 3 months, and I could not be more proud of these three police officers who stand or sit before you right now, but will be standing in front of you shortly. All three officers are currently in the beginning stages of our field training program and will continue in that capacity through the end of the year. This is an important moment of a police officer's career with the Forest Lake Police Department, where each officer is formally sworn into office by reciting the oath of office in front of our city council, their families, friends, and community. Mr. Mayor, if you could be so kind to step up here, and Officer Brown, Officer Glenn, Officer Coulter, if you can step forward. And I can give each one of these to them.
All right. So Tom, I ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joshua Brown, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer with and for the City of Forest Lake and State of Minnesota.
I, Joshua Brown, do solemnly swear I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer with and for the City of Forest Lake and the state.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. I'll probably stop this time. I forgot last time. So, I, Angela Glenn, Ashley Glenn, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
I, Ashley Glenn, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer with and for the City of Forest Lake and State of Minnesota.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of a police officer with and for the City of Forest Lake and the state.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I ask you to raise your right hand and Repeat after me. I, Thomas Coulter, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
I, Thomas Coulter, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer with and for the city of Forest Lake and the state of Minnesota.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer with and for the city of Forest Lake and the state of Minnesota.
Congratulations. I'd like to ask council to come down and welcome our three new officers. Congratulations. Welcome.
Families and community members, if you want to go up to the community room, we've got some refreshments up there. And if you'd like to leave, you can speak with our new officers.
The box that one up a little bit. Okay. Gotta do better than that.
As long as they had a copy that they could read.
No.
So we still on down?
No, we're at full strength
Thought
now.
we were the dog officer now.
No, he's still in force.
When we get the dog, what duty again?
I believe so, yeah. All right, Bailey, can you grab the open forum, please? Thank you very much. Can move you to last if you don't mind, John. We'll let, in case we got some interactions here. So, Elvin, go right ahead.
My name is Elvin Norby. I live in Forest Lake Township. And this is just a question. I've got a couple things going on. Ron brought up the fact of this stormwater fee, which to me is a farce. And a while back, you guys enacted a thing called a franchise fee. Well, I'm paying $7 a month on my utilities, plus tax. Where's that money going to? How much have you collected and what's it good for? That's all I'm looking for. So I think the township deserves some return on their investment over the last 16 years. It'd be nice to see it, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Ron.
Ron Shaver, Forest Lake. I just have a question for Aaron Parrish. This is something that a guy told me. I can't hardly believe it's true. But he said that the police officers, when they retire, get free hospitalization for 10 years after they retire. Is that true?
Mayor, members of council, in our current bargaining agreements, people that were hired, I think it's before 2010, I can double check on that, are eligible for retiree health insurance if they serve, I believe it's 30 years. But Ron, I can show you the information on that.
So if they don't serve 30 years, they're not eligible?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Don Ship.
I'm Don Ship. I reside on Floral Bay, Forest Lake. I received an email from Aaron Parrish here concerning the fixing of the hangar E at the airport with insurance money and then not renting it out to the new people. I agree with the fixing of the hangar, but I see no justification in not utilizing it. The hangar with the proposed insurance money and so on will stand there for years, and we should be using it. We don't have any other place to put people now. We're full up with all of the lots and we need those people out there. This hangar is has the only aviation-related business at the airport. The only other one we had got driven away last year, and it was the largest business we had at the airport. The people out there have been loyal through this construction thing and so on, and they've been fixing up the hangar, and we need to help them out and let them plan on something. The only one that's out there that has an aviation business is located in those hangars, and he has to have some kind of longevity in order to plan his business. And I see no reason to have a planned obsolescence on a hangar that'll probably stand there for another 40 years. I guess my problem with this whole thing is, when is the airport going to be accepted as an asset to this city? The airport and the land purchase has produced millions of dollars of income to this city through a whole bunch of assets such as the government center, the library, the ball fields, the hockey center, industrial park, senior housing, the YMCA, land sales, and still have 200 acres or so to sell. And yet we're looked at it as a bunch of orphans out there that we should maybe sell the airport. Well, that doesn't make any sense. The state just participated in another $2.5+ million for assets out there, and we need to utilize those. The airport's here to stay, so let's get with it and treat it like the valuable asset that it is, with honesty and fairness. This is long overdue, and we can't live on lies forever. Thank you.
Thank you, and just to clarify, the renters that are there will be staying there. It's just, we're not gonna rent it out to, if they leave, we wouldn't be renting it out to a different renter at that point. But all those people that are renting in Hangar E now are planning on staying there. We're planning on keeping them. We're not gonna dislocate any of them.
So you're not gonna rent out to any people that want to be rented to, if there's a vacancy?
If that's a discussion, yes, we wouldn't rent to new people.
Well, we have it on the agenda too
Yeah.
for a full discussion. in
Yeah,
a
we'd have to
few
bring that
minutes.
up later. Dick Cheetah.
Dick Cheetah, 21833 Healy, Forest Lake. Most of you know that, well, we'll get on the subject. I read the lease for the airport tonight. I've been in business 50 years and never seen anything that was that ridiculous. 35 years and extensions. No scheduled fee attached to it, just ambiguous terms, reasonable increases. What does that mean? I think that the citizens of Forest Lake have been taken for a ride on this issue. Yes, it's a benefit to the community, but it's a bigger benefit to those who are out there with their hangars. Now, you can say whatever you want about bringing in revenues, but the actual revenues that are brought in should be those that are generated on the airport itself. That's a enterprise fund. And the agricultural part, come on guys, that was a separate purchase. That was after the airport. You know, any of you that doubt what I'm saying, just say so, because I have the letters of intent. I have the purchase agreement. I delivered the money to Tom and at the time of the purchase. So you're not fooling me. And when you tell me that it's a good deal to have property, and after reading the lease, that at the end of the lease, they can pick up the building and move it. That's unheard of. Anything that's attached stays. That's been that way forever. Try it out on your real estate. Try to put your house up for sale and then start stripping it and see what happens. Do the same thing with your business. I made a comment to Mr. Mayor earlier this evening that wouldn't it be nice if you, Mr. Husnick, and you, Mr. Winnick, would pick up your businesses and get on that free ride over at the airport? What I'd like to see you do is become transparent. Put an analysis on the table of commercial property, because that's what they would have to have those buildings on if it wasn't the airport. And a piece of commercial property. You're going to find out that those of us that are in business are paying a heck of a lot more taxes and don't have the city of Forest Lake behind me taking care of me, plowing my roads and whatever. I think that this has gone on for 20 years. Someplace along the line, the citizens of Forest Lake own that property. That's an asset of the citizens of Forest Lake. And it should be treated like an asset, and the revenues that come in there in a free or enterprise zone stay with the enterprise. But for how many years now has the airport fallen back on the citizens of Forest Lake to support it? And you've got litigation going on now. And that should be resolved. It should not be on the back of the taxpayers. If you make a mistake in business, you pay for the mistake. You swallow the problem. And if that engineering firm made a mistake over there, their errors and omissions insurance should cover it. Our taxpayers should not have that burden put on them. I think that when you go back and look at, and I have the documents between MnDOT Aeronautical and the town of Forest Lake, the commitment, MnDOT did not forward money to purchase that airport.
We can get you to finish up.
I think I've made a point, and I hope that you'll take it seriously and become transparent as to what's going on there, because the benefit or benefits are over a small portion of our community. The rest of the communities are payer. And I think a lot of people feel the same way as I do, and I heard Mr. Schaefer say it earlier at a previous meeting. We're being taken advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Waller.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm John Waller. I live at 14-0 Homestead Avenue in Hugo, Minnesota, the very last homes in the school district, so I have a connection with Forest Lake. I'm here tonight as I'm the manager that's been appointed by the Washington County Commissioners to the Rice Creek Watershed District, and I believe this is probably my fourth time to appear before you to discuss taxes on an annual basis. And earlier I passed out the 2017 taxes that were assessed by Rice Creek Watershed District on those folks that are in western Washington County along the St. Croix Moraine. To give you an idea, the Watershed District begins right here, this is the northern part of it, goes all the way down to Willerny, goes as far east as County Road 15, where the Marine store is, and drains. We have 4 main outlets for the watershed to the Mississippi River from Washington County. We have ditch number 3 in Hugo. We have ditch number 2, which Forest Lake and Hugo share together. We have ditch number 4 in Forest Lake, which is technically on the Anoka County side of the border, but the 4 branches all drain west into that. And then we have the outlet from Clear Lake that goes in. So all of our water leaves through some kind of a large culvert or pipe, and it goes as it goes. The reason I'm here tonight is to ask the council to consider in the near future to have the mayor and the administrator gather together with the other mayors and administrators that are members of the Rice Creek Watershed District, Washington County contingent, and to begin to talk about how you can write your stormwater management plans and maybe adjust them so that we can have more monies come back to our communities. As you'll see on the documents I gave you, Forest Lake pays in. I think you're number 3 as far as the cities go. Hugo is number 1, Matamidi is number 2, Forest Lake's number 3. And these are only general tax dollars. This doesn't include the extra special assessments that were made on ditch number 4. All right, and you can see that we pay in about over $800,000 a year as a county in this portion, and have our communities from Willerny, Birchwood, Matamidi, Grant, Delwood, Hugo, a little bit of May and a little bit of Scandia, Forest Lake, sit down together and work together on having your common goals of what you could use. And one of those common goals would be maintenance money. The watershed districts are great at mandating improvements, but they're not great at mandating the money to maintain them. They'll let it go for 30 years. Before we've had our ditches that haven't been cleaned in 35, 40 years of this watershed district. Watershed's a unique form of government in that none of us on the board of managers are elected. We are an independent taxing authority. And that's quite a word, independent, when you start to take a look at it. Other than our watershed management plan, which is approved by the Board of Soil and Water Resources, the state has virtually no control, or does anyone else, over the watershed district. And that's why that watershed management plan is such a key document. And what the basis for building that are the stormwater plans of the cities. And so it's very important now that the Met Council has coordinated the time to make sure that the city stormwater plans are completed prior to your land plans, and that the watershed district plan will be completed after your stormwater plans are completed, in sync with the land management plans. And so it's very important that you use that tool aggressively and to think how to use it, how to see your money come back here. Well, we were fortunate, we had $50,000 available. That was money that was earmarked for Washington County right along, but it was money that was earmarked for a program Washington County never uses year after year after year. Rain gardens. We're not building rain gardens here. We're building new communities here, so we don't need a rain garden. Rain gardens are a retrofit for someplace like Roseville or New Brighton, somewhere down in that area. So that $50,000 annually wouldn't be used by August, and then it would be reassigned for those cities in Ramsey and Anoka counties to use. But this year, we had the opportunity to have Washington County have a crack at it, and $25,000 approximately of it came up here and went down towards the problem we've had down on Mrs. Moore and McCullough's in that area. And so that's what I'm here to ask you to do, to start to think about this. It's $800,000 a year. That's a pretty good chunk of change. When we could start to plan our maintenance for stormwater ponds or maintenance for irrigation systems, if you're going to put them in, to reuse the stormwater for irrigations and not drawing it out of the aquifer, and to think about using the phrase resources of concern. You know, White Bear Lake is not a resource of concern in the watershed plan. After all of this commotion that's gone on, court actions and years and years and years, and the meetings we've had down in Hugo with the cities, with the DNR about using our wells and how much water we're drawing, White Bear Lake is not a resource of concern. Now, White Bear Lake doesn't have a water quality problem, it has a quantity problem. There's not enough water in there. But the Watershed Board has had, for years, and even from the very first plan, a member of the Bald Eagle Lake Association on the board. Bald Eagle, we spent $1 million on helping to clean it up. Not that it didn't need it now. But on the other hand, those folks are afraid of losing their water to White Bear Lake. And so we put a little water in White Bear Lake, bring it up, it flows out to Bald Eagle. If we redirected it, we wouldn't have a lot of this problem we've had for the last 6 or 7 years. And those are some of the things that watersheds can do. And if you look at the 103 Chapter D, to be boring, here, special provisions or special uses of a watershed district, purposes, I think the word is, special purposes. There's 14 of them there. And you should take a look at those and start to think about how they work in your community and how your money comes back. And so with that, I'll leave you tonight, and I'll come back next year and we'll start talking about bringing more. But I do want to remind you that the county, for example, has changed the time of year which they ask the watershed districts to come down and make a presentation. Next year, they're going to begin it in March and not in October. We've had it for October for decades, a couple decades now. And they made that change because that's the beginning of the budgeting cycle. And so you can start to talk to the watershed district before the budget begins. And as Aaron knows, and Ryan, Rice Creek, for the first time last year, began a program where we invite the cities, all 28 cities in, to ask them what rules were problems, what changes are needed to be made, how do we change our grant system so that you receive your money back. And that's a progress that's begun by complaining. So complaining is good. There's nothing wrong with it. So I hope we can look at our taxes and continue this, and look forward to working with you so that we have more of our dollars come back into our county, not just one community or two, but go across the board. Thank you, sir.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you for everything you do on the board for us. All right, that ends the open forum. So we'll look for the consent agenda. We'll look for a motion on that, or
So
changes?
moved. Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the items A through I on the consent agenda.
All right.
I'll
Do we have a
second.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Brings us to item 7B, AEM agreement. Aaron?
Mayor, members of council, this is an agreement with AEM Financial Services. Currently, they provide contract finance director services to the city of Forest Lake. The agreement before you is for 3 years. The pricing is also outlined within the packet, and I will try to get that pulled up here for you. Bailey, if you can just make sure I'm cut in, and maybe I am already. Yep, I am. Thank you. This is the pricing. So in 18, it'd be 117,000, and 19 and 20, it goes up slightly every year. As you know, this was something that we started when our previous finance director moved on to another opportunity, and we've been doing this for a little over 2 years now. Overall, AEM has done a great job of providing a base level of financial services. They are here 1 day a week. With that, though, we are getting 1 day a week of service compared to 5 days a week of service. There's been a lot of adjustment in duties amongst various other staff that's had to occur in order to make this work. We did have the opportunity to talk about this on a more detailed basis with the Personnel Committee to just discuss the potential for bringing the finance director position back in-house. Of course, we're not going to do that before the end of the year. We do have the AEM agreement before you. The agreement is flexible enough if we do come to the conclusion that we'd be best served with an in-house finance director, that we do have the ability to terminate with a 60-day notice. And so from that perspective, the two discussions aren't mutually exclusive. I guess ultimately, I did include some information that the Personnel Committee discussed in your packet on what it would take to bring the position back in-house, what the net difference would be in cost. It would be somewhat more expensive, although I would note that we are incurring a fair amount of additional overtime. That would be somewhat of an offset on the finance director position, and the other, I think you would get more service and benefit to the community. With that being said, not an easy market right now for finance directors and finance professionals generally. So as we've talked to some other communities, they've definitely indicated as they've gone out, while they've been able to find people or develop people internally, it has been a challenge and the pools have not been significant. So with that tonight, the recommendation is to approve the agreement with the AEM. But I would encourage the council to continue to evaluate the potential for providing the services in-house, and would appreciate the opportunity to continue that conversation. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions for Aaron on this?
So a couple questions. You mentioned kind of just general knowledge of the market of, it is a tough market, but we haven't actively recruited for finance directors. I just want to make sure you have some feelers out, you've asked some questions, but we haven't actually actively recruited, correct?
That's correct. And so Prior Lake, Elk River, and Farmington have gone through recent recruitments. We've reached out to those communities and just really benchmarked that off of their experience.
Got it, okay.
Anything else?
Cost,
Yeah,
the cost difference of, yes, there is a cost difference, and, I think there's some question of what a finance director would ultimately cost, but you're looking at a 1-day-a-week service versus 5 days a week. And if you offset that with some overtime and the memo also references some potential consulting fees, I think it's worth pursuing or continuing the conversation on a finance director. But I think we want to have a pretty specific parameters on what we're looking for and recruit for the right individual for that role. So I'm open to continuing that conversation, but tonight we have to make a decision on AEM, and I would support that contract as well.
All right. Any other input?
Well, yeah, this should have never happened in the first place. We're getting 50 days worth of work for $117,000. That's what it amounts to. And the CLE leave was mind-boggling. And I think we should be actively recruiting to get someone back in that's in here full-time so we can get some answers and get things done the way they should be. And the extra money, of course, it's not the payroll as much as it is the benefits that go with it. And but to pay $117,000 for 50 days worth of work is ridiculous.
I think to clarify that, we've got a person 1 day a week here, but we are getting services to the whole firm.
I disagree with you. I don't think we're getting that. I just don't.
Mayor, Members, Council, I think that when we went into this, I think one of the working assumptions was that there was some back office work that was happening, and I think that did happen for a while. I'm not sure that continues to be the case. Certainly, as we've talked about it internally, generally speaking, our service is limited to Tuesdays for the most part, and again, it's we're meeting the basic expectations. You're getting clean audits. The bank statements are being reconciled. I don't want to create the impression that the basics are not being covered, because they are. But you're missing a lot of the value-added features that we have. I mean, you'll notice our budget document is not as robust as it once was. You'll notice that, from a public engagement perspective, in terms of, how are we reporting our finances, that's maybe not as robust as it had previously been. And then I just think ultimately it comes down to a situation of what do we want existing staff focusing on? And we can go through, those elements that are, been redistributed to other positions, and what kind of internal services being provided, and so on. If you're willing to have that conversation, I just, certainly if you're interested in it, you have the potential to recruit, see what your pool looks like. If you feel like you get a qualified candidate, you can go that direction with it. If you don't, you certainly have the option to, maintain the relationship with AEM if ultimately don't find someone that's a good fit here. So, again, when we went into this, it was something the council had wanted to explore as an option to see how the services would be provided. I think we've had the opportunity to, understand that for the last 2 years. And I just think there's a lot of projects in finance right now that need attention, and we'll probably have to if we aren't gonna look at an internal position, we're gonna have to look at additional consulting expense above and beyond the base price with AEM right now.
Be a little more specific on what type of projects?
Yeah, I think the biggest one right now certainly is, what are we going to do with utility billing? Our current system really isn't working that well. Again, that's a contracted relationship. Yeah, we need to do something different there. We've had that conversation, for a number of times with the council. But again, another area where we don't feel we're getting the type of service that we expect and our residents deserve. We've had a long list of things we can talk to you about as far as, what's a concern from that perspective. I just think the staff in that particular department aren't getting the type of individualized supervision that they deserve and the community deserves. I mean, I provide that right now, and I'm not a financial person. So I have a base level, of involvement there, but I don't necessarily have the ability to go in and judge work and assess work. And, really I'm finding out about things if there's problems more than having the ability to proactively look at those types of things. I think that those are probably the big areas, I think. Things that were done previously with the position that have been reallocated to other staff. Our insurance management process, so now that's a function I currently fulfill where if we get a claim, I'm processing that with the League of Cities. If we go through the renewal process, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but between myself and the department heads, there's a fair amount of work that goes into the work comp, property casualty, and liability renewal process. We just went through a fairly extensive effort, and this was mostly Dave, but to attempt to get no-fault sewer backup coverage for our residents based on some enhanced maintenance practices that we're going through. And so, there's a lot of those types of things. Previously, the position was more engaged in projecting out and costing out labor contracts and evaluating and benchmarking labor contracts. I mean, that's something also that I've done more work with. Our senior accounting clerk, Brenda, probably has assumed the lion's share of the additional responsibilities, just in terms of day-to-day additional accounting, additional escrow analysis. I mean, we could kind of go on with a number of things. Again, I'm happy to kind of talk through more of that, but I just think for the amount of money we're spending versus the amount of work that's being produced, and I've given you what I think the maximum difference is. I think that would consolidate. We could do a better job with our CIP planning. We could do a better job with reconciling our assessments and state aid balances and a lot of the things that Ryan works with. And I'm not asking you to figure it out tonight because it's, the Personnel Committee just had one conversation about it. But I do think it is a topic that warrants consideration. One thing I did neglect to omit with the conversation on the AEM agreement, Bridget would suggest a condition of approval to that agreement that the language highlighted here also be included, and it just is some standard language on the insurance that we like to have in our agreements. And so if you are inclined to make a motion to approve the AEM agreement this evening as recommended, it would also be with the condition that this insurance language be included in the agreement.
All right, open it up to the council for any discussion.
Go ahead.
I would think at this time, seeing as we're in a short time frame to approve, I would recommend that we go ahead with AEM with the understanding that we will continue to discuss as a council the possibility of where we go from here and the specifics of, my way of thinking, there's some steps between a finance director and something less than a finance director to cover some of these things that Aaron's just talked about, but that's for discussion.
Well, and I haven't reviewed our original contract with AEM, but if they're not fulfilling the expectations of that, I would expect notification there. So I think we really do need to look at what changes. Either give them the opportunity to rebid other services or compare it to that. But they're fulfilling what we originally hired them to do, I think is the big factor there. And we're getting the services of the complete firm, not just one individual. We have to look at training, continuing training, other things that aren't costed in there right now as well. You know, what do we do when somebody's on vacation, sick leave? You know, there's a lot of factors when you're relying on just one individual to fulfill that position that, you know, puts more pressure on other things down the line. So anyway, tonight we are discussing, you know, completing this contract and continuing the talk with the Personnel Committee.
Did Personnel Committee come to a recommendation or a conclusion? You mentioned you discussed it. Was there a strong consensus that came out?
I think they received the information. It was on the tail end of a joint fire board meeting, and so it was pretty late when the conversation took place.
Thank you.
All right. I'll look for a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve the AEM agreement with the amended language, the insurance language recommended by Bridget.
All right. Thank you. You got a motion?
And then follow recommendation that we workshop, kind of continue the conversation, future workshop in 2018.
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Aaron, can you take us through Hangar E?
I didn't get to vote.
Oh, you didn't vote? I'm sorry. I thought you said.
I was opposed to the vote, that's all.
I'm sorry.
Okay, got it. Just wanted, I'm the nay vote, okay?
Mayor, members of council, I won't go through this on a detailed basis, given the fact that you had a conversation about this last week at your workshop. But there were options that the Airport Commission reviewed and evaluated. They provided that recommendation to you. In essence, you're adopting, or the discussion at the workshop would have you adopting their recommendation to complete the repairs at Hangar E based on the contractor pricing we received, with the one notable difference that we would not continue to backfill vacancies as they become available. With the logic there is, as a vacancy occurs, or in the event that the facility or the building needs to go away in the future, in that instance, you're obligated to provide relocation benefits to the tenants. So this would, in effect, allow current people to continue utilizing their space, but then long-term transition, to the point where, the building would no longer be utilized, and then you would kind of relieve yourself of that obligation for relocation expense. I guess with that, the recommendation is to retain Lotsky Construction to repair Hangar E using the insurance proceeds provided by the League Insurance Trust, with the understanding that no additional leases will be provided in the hangar going forward. And that, I think, was my attempt to capture the workshop discussion that you had. So, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Go ahead, Ed.
Aaron, is there any, those hangars, I presume they fall under the guidance that no matter who leases them, they have to be aviation?
Generally speaking, yeah, the orientation is toward aviation, given the fact that you don't necessarily want to intermix the uses. You are on property that's dedicated for airport use, and a lot of our grant agreements, speak to focusing the use on aviation.
What if you rent it to somebody that, say, does aviation repair? Would they be entitled to relocation?
Yes.
They would be.
And I know one question that did come up at the workshop, and I believe Bridget had the opportunity to look into it, was just what happens in the event that there's some damage to personal property or a plane within the facility there? And I don't know, Bridget, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, certainly. So I did take a brief look, Mayor, members of the council, at the leases. And, there's a bit of a difference. It depends on kind of what caused the damage, et cetera. There are a number of kind of key provisions. Specifically, I'm just looking at one of the lease agreements here, but with respect to the hangar itself, the lessee agrees to accept the hangar in an as-is condition. I wasn't sure if there was some question about kind of this idea of habitability and whether or not it would be suitable for the particular lease. Now, in the context of a residential lease in Minnesota, there's an implied covenant of habitability that doesn't exist in the commercial real estate commercial lease context. So there's no implied warranty of suitability for the particular use. And there isn't a requirement that the city make these structural repairs. Depends on, from like a common law standpoint, it depends on the structure of the lease itself. I would note that the obligations of lessee section also indicates that the lessee does waive any right to claim and agree it won't hold the city of Forest Lake or any of its employees, et cetera, for any loss occasioned by fire, theft, rain, windstorm, hail, or other cause for any damage to items left in that hangar. Now, just because the lease says that, I would caution that doesn't mean that someone couldn't raise a claim, but that is the language that's found within the lease. And finally, I would note that there is an obligation of lessor section regarding maintenance of the appurtenances, facilities, and services connected with the airport that does require the lessor to maintain those in good condition. I'm not sure if that answers the question. I hope it does.
Thank you.
All right.
I think that's the way it's always been. You know, the comments that I made at the Airport Commission meeting was the fact that over the next 5 years, we need to do something. We have to be thinking about doing something to get this right. And I think if you offer people an alternative, you know, maybe an expansion where you could actually offer them a place to build a hangar, or someone comes up with a rental and they would choose to move there on their own, that would happen. In the meantime, I think that leaving a space empty there is not a good idea. And the folks that are there, I mean, they're buying fuel and doing whatever it takes there too. So I'm totally against this idea of not of leaving a space empty when somebody vacates it for now.
Well, I think the big problem is the relocation expense, or what are they, $6,000 to $9,000 per rental unit?
It's variable, and as mentioned at the workshop, the bulk of that is facilitating the process and the consulting expense associated with relocation and noticing and tenant relocation.
Terrible.
It's horrible rules, but.
Yeah.
And the state paid for that last time. So, but the point is, that's a ridiculous way of doing things, and it's all because of a Minnesota statute.
Yeah. And our income, I mean, it would take 10 years worth of rent just to pay for the relocation expense, so it just doesn't.
I think if you give people an opportunity to make up their own mind as far as have an option, a different option, I think that would go away. I don't understand, beyond that, what you'd have to do.
I have a question for Bridget, really. Could a leasee waive that right for relocation?
Mayor, members of the council, I would not advise the city that the leasee could effectuate a valid waiver of those relocation benefits. I think there's some language within the existing lease agreements that you could point to and say, we think this might cover that. But because of the risk associated with a future claim for relocation benefits with respect to attorney's fees and other damages, based on our review of the lease language and our review of the relocation statutes, both the federal regs as well as the applicable state statute, as you mentioned, it's our position that it's not, a waiver would not provide sufficient assurance that the city could not face potential costs for that later on.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'm open to a long-term conversation about a longer-term rental solution at the airport. I do think the airport is an asset, just to address some of the questions that were brought up in open forum. And I'm open to exploring something that is a longer-term rental solution, but I think my concern is that hangar-y isn't it. And so we have an opportunity now to make some repairs using some insurance funds to do that. I think we should do that. That was the question we originally wrestled with, is should we even repair it? And yes, I think we should. But I'm concerned on continuing the tail of leases and continuing to build new leases until we have something that is longer term, or else the simple economics just don't line up given that relocation charge. If that relocation charge didn't exist, I would say as is, rent it away as long as people are, as long as people, it's a valuable asset that people want to pay for. But with those relocation charges, the math just doesn't work, and we need a different solution, so.
All right. Any other comments? If not, we'll look for a motion. Or do we? Yeah. We're looking for a motion to retain Lansky Construction for Hangar E.
So I would make a motion to retain Longsky Construction for the Hangar E repairs with the understanding that there's no additional leases provided in the hangar going forward.
All right.
I will second it.
Any further discussion?
I do have. The existing lessees that are out there, you made the statement before that they would, as long as they're willing to stay, they're welcome to stay.
Right.
And I presume, Sam talked about a 5-year plan, and we don't know how long that building is going to last. If it lasts 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. Are we saying they stay? Just, because I agree with what Mr. Shipp said, that guy's got to make a plan with his business. He can't.
Well, I don't think we can speak for future council, but, as long as the building is there and structurally sound, I guess, I'm fine with, continuing their leases on. I do believe that, demand for the airport's gonna pick up. We are gonna have to, we're full now, so we are gonna be looking at expansion. And hopefully within that, there'll be some private T-hangar rental spaces. The city doesn't belong in the rental business. We don't do a very good job with it. That's not what we should be doing. Quicker we can get out of that and get a, private condo or rental type scenario out there, the better off it is. But are they $125 a month? Is that what we get for those units, or how much are we renting them for?
That's correct.
Per unit?
Right.
So we got like 3 of them out there. I mean, it's, the cost and administration is, and everything else just far exceeds what we're getting for revenue from it. And trying to be transparent, but it is. It's costing us more than the revenue we'll ever get from it, so.
Was your question around it? And those leases are month to month, correct?
That is correct.
So my impression is that until the city has a different option on the table or has something, a different product we want to put out there, that, I don't think we can make any promises as to how long that repaired hangar is going to exist, but I think it would be our intent that, at least in this duration period, that we continue to offer those to those existing leaseholders. That would be my impression.
Yep. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. And hopefully the state does change that statute. So Bailey or Aaron, the city meeting calendar?
We drafted the 2018 city meeting calendar. Everything pretty much stayed the same with the exception to the year. Any questions, I can answer them.
Yeah, we need to change the date from 2017 to 2018. If you look at the very top.
Yeah, right on top there. Yeah. That's a good start.
We got the right year?
What year
I
are we
worked
talking
really
about?
hard moving all those little icons around.
Yeah.
Do we have the right year?
Otherwise.
So this is 2018 then, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
The one thing I didn't check when I looked at packet and comes to mind now, Forest Lake Spring Break is the week of March 5th, is that correct?
I do not recall. I don't know that we did plan around that, if that
I'm not
is the
sure. I thought they
case.
moved it, wasn't it earlier?
I don't remember.
Well, we can table this till next meeting so we can check a couple of
We have
things too.
30 seconds, I think I can find out. Forest Lake Spring Break is the week of March 12th. That would have a council meeting that day.
Well, so far, there's nothing on the agenda for that night, so.
We could certainly adjust that to the 5th, or we could, as we have in the past, we could just see how vacation schedules are lining up on that particular night and where agenda items are. And I think in the past, we have potentially even canceled that.
Yeah. Maybe take a poll early February,
I think
see what
it did
schedules
get
look like.
canceled
And
last year, didn't it?
It did.
I think it did, yeah.
Otherwise, I don't have any
Yeah,
any
it's fine with
feedback
me.
or any other concerns.
This even require a motion or anything? I mean, is it just an informational thing? Or?
No, it does. We actually are required to publish the calendar annually here. And so what it does is it sort of is a blanket meeting notification for us, for all of our meetings. And then we kind of, go from there as a starting point for the entire year.
Aaron, have the other commissions approved already?
They have not. Their meeting times have not changed at all. So they're generally consistent with what they have previously adopted. Now, this can change, as you know, like last year, if you recall, I think parks started at 5 and then moved to 6. And so it's not as if there's no flexibility once the year starts if the needs of a commission change, but this is the starting point, I guess.
No problem.
All right, so look for a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve the calendars as presented. And we'll have to work around that, the March thing, the March spring break. I know last year got canceled anyways, so that day, so.
Do we want to just move it right now?
I think we can work around that.
I think so. So we have a motion. Can we get a second on that one?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. 7E, the Winnick Supply invoices.
I'll make a motion that we pay the Winnick Supply invoices.
Second.
All right, and I guess all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstain. That brings us to staff updates.
Oh, I just got screwed up this month.
We got,
So
I thought I seen
my wife's getting it straightened out tonight.
Dave. Oh, there's Dave. All right, thank you. Dan?
I have an update on the encoder. We should have our new encoder this week. I was promised 2 weeks ago that they were doing one last bug fix on it, and we were one of the first agencies to roll it out, so we should be getting it this week. He told me Monday, Tuesday, so I'm hoping by the end of the week, and then once it's in, I'll do some testing on it, some pretty robust testing to make sure that everything is functioning. And I did also let them know that when they do the encoder update, all of the back meetings that aren't there, they're gonna go through and upload those as part of the process. So I'm crossing my fingers that by Friday of this week, we should be back to whole on our encoder and previous meeting archive. So I'll keep everybody posted if anything changes in the schedule for that.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Dan, is that their last shot at it?
Yeah, this is kind of their MO in terms of we have problems with the encoder. I make a series of calls with the tech support, go through a whole kind of process with them, and then it seems the last time we had this issue, they released an encoder update, they fixed it for a while. They told me this is a complete changeover in how everything's gonna upload. They're changing everything out on their server side. So it should solve it. If it doesn't solve it, it's gonna really push me in the direction to recommend probably a different streaming and agenda service moving forward, because the problems have become more frequent and their tech support, or their support has become less responsive in the past 6 months. So it's kind of a combination of poor service and poor support is leading me down the path of where else can we go for streaming services.
You had the Canadian firm, right?
I do. I have looked at the Canadian firm. Like I said in the past, it brings up the issue of they have good streaming, but not a lot of agenda management. So it's trying to see if we can marry two services together or look at a different package completely. So I have reached out to a couple other companies as well that have submitted some bids, not some bids, but kind of exploratory sales calls, and looked at a couple of them, and on their face, their software looks okay, but then you actually look at how some of the companies have, or other cities have integrated it in, and it's not living up to the expectations. So I also don't want to go into and make a rush decision into another streaming package and end up in the same position in 6 months or a year. So if this does not fix it from Excella's point of view, or if Excella doesn't fix it with this encoder upgrade, I'll be looking at probably doing a pretty exhaustive search for the next round, because I just don't want to keep having these issues, especially as, when these issues are there, a lot of residents are having lodged complaints that we're having issues with our service. So I want to make sure we're providing good streaming opportunities for everybody.
I guess just a question, or maybe more of a proposal to put out there, but we were just talking about the calendar and now we're talking about the streaming. But if we can get this to work, where are we at statute-wise and everything if a member of the council needed to Skype into a meeting rather than attend a meeting?
There are options to Skype in, but there's some nuances where the location where the council member is has to be open to the public. If I correct me if I'm wrong, Bridget, that's...
No, that's correct. So there are some capabilities, but there are statutory constraints that would need to be explored as well.
Do we need
You need to adopt a policy on access, and make sure you have the technology here, which, wouldn't be a big deal, but you need to adopt a policy within your, I suppose the council rules of procedure, it could be a kind of a component of that, and you do need to do that. We discussed it maybe 4 years ago, and at that time, I think the council indicated that they did not want to go that route, but we can certainly, explore that and bring that forward for another option if you wanted to do that. So.
Well, it hasn't been an issue yet, but I think it'd be nice to address it before there would be a need for it anyway.
We could put that on the workshop for future discussion if you like.
Sounds good. All right, moving on. Chief Newman?
Earlier this year, we had received a grant for the purchase of air packs. Well, in late September, we received those air packs, and over the last month and a half, we've been training, getting ready for the switchover. And so tomorrow night, we will actually remove the old air packs out of service and put in the new air packs. So pretty excited for that. And then over the last week, we've been responding to several grass fires with neighboring departments. Friday, we responded to a 40-acre grass fire in Stillwater, and then earlier today, we responded to a 10-acre grass fire in Llano Lakes. In both instances, our airboat was requested in order to break up ice on the ponds, in order for the helicopters to be able to use their drop tank and pick up water. And so I'm expecting with the conditions, if they continue to remain the same, that we'll continue to go out with the airboat and our brush rigs. And because of the dry weather, we have stopped issuing burn permits in Columbus and Forest Lake until we get either additional snow cover or additional moisture. And it looks like Sundays may be the first opportunity, but that's only a 50% chance.
All right, thank you.
Are we unique in that we have the airboat, or are they just requesting all airboats that are other surrounding agencies don't have airboats, or
Linwood
are they
has
just asking for all?
airboats, and Stillwater's got an airboat, but Stillwater's boat's out of service for repair.
Okay.
So it is, right now, we're kind of the only option.
Yeah, okay. Nice work.
Chief Newman, how do we get the word out on a no-burn permit? You rely on somebody to call?
Well, the only two jurisdictions that offer or issue them are Columbus City Hall and Forest Lake City Hall, and then the fire chief. So people call in to issue a permit, and at that time we let them know that they're...
But in a no-burn condition, is that something that's on our website, or?
Well, we're actually not under a no-burn condition from the DNR, but the fire chief has authority to put us
But I mean,
into-
say you issue one, that no burn, for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
How does the consumer out there know?
I guess I'm not understanding the
Well,
question.
we're not currently putting it on our website. so,
We're not?
Yeah, but the volume is pretty low.
In the past, we have, if it was like an extreme kind of out of the ordinary one, we have done some public outreach for it through the website and stuff, but as of right now, we have nothing on the site or on the social media, but I can get it added to it while the conditions are.
Because I got to believe there's probably a majority of people don't apply for a permit.
They actually do because it's about a $300 ticket that
I
you
know
get
that,
for burning. And with the fires that we've had out in Carlos Avery, the neighbors are pretty quick to notify
Report?
police department and fire if people are burning.
Probably wouldn't hurt to put something on the front sign out there too, just, dry conditions, no.
I think it's a situation people don't expect there to be dry conditions right now and just forget that it's as dry as it is.
It's nice to have a little fire burning when it's cold like
Well,
this, so.
does that include recreational fire?
It does not include recreational. It's your 10 by 10 or bigger.
Was the Stillwater fire recreation, one of them was started by a recreational fire, weren't
I believe that was Stillwater's.
maybe good just a reminder of, they're not prohibited, but just extra careful, extra caution, given current
Put
conditions.
it on the Smoky sign on the Clear, frontage road by Clear Lake there. They got the Smokey the Bear
Yep.
thing there.
All right. Bailey, any updates?
No.
All right. Aaron?
Just a couple quick ones. Reminder that we do have our budget hearing on the 4th, next Monday, so December meetings are a little bit different. At this point, the plan is that our only December regular city council meeting will be on December 4th. The larger item on that, in addition to some ordinance issues that you've talked about at the workshop, will be the budget hearing. We also have a joint meeting scheduled for December 11th with Parks, Trails, and Lakes and FLA. I want to just thank Jamie for doing a great job with the tree lighting ceremony last night, and Mr. Mayor, who kind of did the countdown on all of that. And so I think it was a great event and perfect weather, of course. Not great for burning and all that, but great sweatshirt weather for that event. So she did a nice job putting that together. I also want to acknowledge our finance staff. As we talked, again, basics are being covered, and we were the recipient of the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. That is based on the work that our auditors do with the material statement of our finances. Also, follow up to the joint workshop that we had with the Watershed District. Just be thinking about whether or not you want staff to submit formal comments on the rule revisions that were discussed. I think the Watershed did a nice job of meeting us halfway on a lot of items, especially with linear projects. But the larger item that's still out there is the trigger, that 5,000 square feet versus 10,000 or an acre in non-riparian areas. So be thinking if you want us to be doing that, and that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Bridget?
Thank you, Your Honor. No comments, Ronnie.
All right. And Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, I'm just going to leave this in the mail room, which is a infrastructure report card that I obtained at the American Public Works Association conference a couple of weeks ago that was produced by the American Society of Civil Engineers. Just kind of guide, just kind of what I deal with on a daily basis, but there also is one being specifically developed for the state of Minnesota that I'll share with you when I obtain that as well. Last week, we submitted comments on the Washington County Capital Improvement Plan. That's out for draft. They'll have a public hearing. I believe it's December 13th. One of those major comments, though, was related to that we had formally requested that the county dedicate staff and assist in the planning and development of a future interchange in the area of I-35E and 180th Street North, which then kind of aligns with the comp plan that we've been working, on, and then also related to a specific meeting that was held last week on November 20th. That we specifically talked about that interchange, the current conditions. We went over the background of that area. Supporting arguments for the interchange at the 180th area, issues that need to be addressed, pros and cons exercise, and strategy. And that'll also be talked about tomorrow night at the comp plan meeting as well. But just want to give you a heads up on that. 11th Avenue striping project that we've talked about, basically flip-flopping the traffic. So we sent letters out to all the adjacent property owners, just informing them this was something the council wanted to explore. If continue to move forward, this would be completed in 2018. So at this point, we're gathering those comments and I'll maybe bring those forward at a January workshop. And then also obtaining quotes from some contractors, just so we can make a decision on that. And then the Moore drain tile project has been completed. Obviously, the project will wait to be closed out in the spring upon final restoration being established, so, but already draining water, so.
Yeah, now, did they have to do something to the pond, or did that just drain down?
That's what happens when you got gravity working with you.
Okay, that was all gravity. I wasn't sure if they had to fill part of that in or not, but I see it's completely drained out anyway.
That goes to Clear Lake now?
Yes, like it historically used to.
They actually had to hire people to come out and catch woodchucks? Is that part of the contract too?
Not our
Is
contract.
it? Okay. I heard something about that and it didn't make sense, but they said they had somebody from the state out there trying to relocate the woodchucks. And I didn't think they were living on airport property, so I wasn't sure why they'd have to relocate them, but.
And I guess another highlight in that area, we finally made it through the process of getting the weir removal approved. So it's on MnDOT's maintenance schedule. They'll notify us upon removal of that, so.
And that'll lower another like 6 inches or
6
more?
inches out of the main drainage way.
All helps. All right, thank you, Ryan. Council updates. Sam?
No updates in this meeting. Thanks.
Ed?
The only thing I've got is I also attended the tree lighting ceremony, and I just echo what somebody said about Jamie did an excellent job. It was well organized, and the kids this year, that for those of you that didn't go, they had a horse-drawn wagon, and the kids really got a kick out of that. I don't know how many trips they made, but I was out there after the trees. The guy stayed, and he probably stayed an extra hour just to get all the remaining kids through that wagon, and so. And also kudos to whoever did the tree, our Public Works, I believe, because it actually went almost to the second when they had the countdown, it lit up, so. Better than one of the other ones I was at where they put the plug together and nothing happened. So. It was good.
All right, thank you. And obviously I attended the tree lighting as well, and yeah, it was a great time, and Jamie did phenomenal on that, and all the city staff that was there did and the community that was participating in it. Everybody had a good time. Want to thank Kodiak. They provided beverages and cookies, I believe, so real nice time. That's it for me. Mara?
Attended the 180th interchange meeting that Ryan had mentioned. Small group just to talk about moving forward with that as a project. It was well attended, good start to the discussion. Had a good time on Small Business Saturday. Got to see some of the local businesses that were participating. Also attended the tree lighting on yesterday and echo everyone's comments on executed event on part of city staff, and great to see all the community members out there. So.
All right, thank you. And so now we're looking for a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Your Honor, I would just note that it be pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D05 Subdivision 3B for the specific purpose of discussing pending airport litigation. If you can have that reflected in your motion.
Thank you.
Amend your motion. I'll second the amended motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries.